This story that I'm talking about right here is not completely different from another type of story that I did a couple years ago. Now, if y'all been subscribed to my channel for a while now, a couple years ago, I did a story about an individual who was in New Jersey. It was a black person in New Jersey who was locked up in a prison, and they ended up violating two female inmates inside of this prison, and they ended up in there because they claimed to be Hall T. And when you looked at their image, it was like, it's no way you can sit up here and tell me with a straight face that this person could even remotely, one, be quote unquote trans, or two, even try to claim to be that of a woman. Yet they ended up in a women's prison, which fast forwards me they ended up, before I go to this story, they actually ended up being transferred out of that prison and into a male prison, and then tried to claim that they were being discriminated against and a whole bunch of stuff, but they wasn't trying to hear it. After you do something like that, at that point you have declared yourself to be a man. And then they ended up being sent to that particular location, and I haven't heard really much of anything since then about that. Which leads me to this story right here. Now, I was just scrolling through my Instagram stories, and I ended up on Nikki the Guy's story, and shout out to Nikki the Guy. And she had this picture posted and it had a little caption up there, and I said, all I did was type shaking my head, and then she had replied back to me in a DM and said, can you talk about this? Can you make this into a story? Because I had no intentions of doing it. If she didn't reply back to me asking me, can I turn this into a story, I probably wouldn't have talked about it. And you know, I want to know what's so interesting about this is that this story was posted in June, in Pride Month, quote unquote. I just realized June has so many things going on in this month. It's crazy. But anyway, in this picture you see a man by the name, and yes, I said man, by the name of Tremaine Carroll. He's 51 years of age, and he's currently, or was, inside of a women's prison because this person identified themselves as trans. So it's like, now all you have to do is just say I'm trans, and they just put you in a women's prison. And I keep saying to myself, I said, the more and more they keep doing it, the more and more you're gonna hear stories like this. Now look at this person right here. There's no way you can tell me this person was quote unquote trans. I'm looking at a dude. I'm looking at a straight up man. Well, the reason why he's in the news, the reason why Tremaine is in the news, is because they violated two women in that facility. Now, I believe these were two female inmates, and he violated two of them because it was two counts. He was indicted on two violation counts. I'm not going to say the actual words. You already know what it is that I'm talking about it. And because of that, they have been transferred out of the women's prison and will most likely be relocated into a men's prison. And they said that this person is a third strike trans. That's what they're labeling this person as. So this is a person that has repeatedly done this. They said he's 51 years of age, and he's an incarcerated biological male who identifies as a woman and faces two charges of forcible violation and one of dissuading a witness from testifying. So this person, this Tremaine, went in as a man and now is identifying as trans, because they said trans identified, but of course they're biologically born as a male who chooses to identify as a woman. I'm telling you, we are literally living in the upside down, and it's crazy because y'all know I just recently posted that video with what J.K. Rowling said, and they don't, Hall T don't like her. But it's like, when you see and hear stories like this, can you really discount what it is that she's saying, at least on that aspect? Some of the other things is like whatever what she says, but as far as that goes, this right here is further proving her point, despite how people in that community actually feel. Now it's funny because you have people who are in Hall T that will say, oh, don't misgender me, I'm choosing to identify as a trans woman or a trans man, but you never ever hear them talk about stories like this where you have pervs, because this, let's be real here, this guy is a perv who go into these women's prisons all for the sake of wanting to violate them. And all they got to do is say, I'm trans, or I identify as a woman, and that's all they have to say. That's, you know how scary that is? Where all you have to do is say, I identify as a woman, and because of the laws, they can't tell them they can't go. All they have to do is say, I identify as a woman. They don't even have to have no operations done. They don't even have to look like a woman or nothing. Like, look at this person. Really? That's the scary part. That and some of them wonder why people, well, mainly women, don't want them coming into the women's restroom or going into the women's dressing room or the changing room or whatever it is. Remember that story that happened a couple years ago? I forgot what state it was. It was at that spa, and there was a man in there literally changing, and he quote unquote identified as a woman, and he's in there changing in the nude, and they complained about it, and they tried to make it seem like that black woman, because she was the one making the most noise, was wrong for that. You had them coming out there protesting and saying how this spa was anti-trans, but you don't hear people from that community come out and condemn this. And in this month, you definitely won't hear about it. It goes on to say, as one of the alleged victims of the January 30th incident, so this happened back in January, is a biological female identified as Jane Doe in court documents, said Carroll attacked her in the shower, the most vulnerable spot that she could be in. And I'm talking about the woman, not this dude. The most vulnerable spot she could be in, because again, she has no clothes on, she's in a shower, she's bathing, basically. That was a vulnerable spot for them to attack. It says, at the Central California's women's facility, and violated her. It says the complaint also mentions another unidentified victim. Carroll has since been transferred to Kern Valley State Prison, a male-only facility in Delano, online records show. They said a women's rights activist tells Fox News Digital that Carroll, who was the public face of a campaign to support California Law SB 32, and I talked about that law, which allows transgender prisoners to be housed in a facility consistent with their gender identity, is a case in point why the law harms incarcerated women. And I keep telling people, especially a lot of women out there, be careful what you ask for when it comes to these groups, because you give them an inch and they'll take the whole football field. But I remember, if y'all, again, going back to, if y'all been following me for a while, if you've been following my channel for a while, I did either it might have been a live or a video. It might have been a video, because at the time I wasn't doing midday streams, talking about SB 132. And ironically, the person that was pushing that to be a law was a person in the academy themselves. It was a white guy, I forgot his name. But and I was looking at that, I'm like, y'all better be real careful with this. And see, like that SB 132, where all you got to do is say, I'm this or I'm that, and they have to adhere to that by law. So this guy, again, went in there and claimed to be a woman, and they had to adhere to that and put him in the women's prison. And look at what he did. He violated 2 women inmates, just like the one in Jersey. Now, I don't know what kind of laws they got in Jersey, but it was pretty much playing out the same exact way. And because this is a law, this is going to continue to happen unless they can find a way to overturn it. Hopefully they can. It says previous to SB 132, biological male inmates were allowed to, on a case-by-case individualized basis, be placed in women's facilities, but not if they hadn't had surgery. And it was always very individualized. What the bill did, however, what SB 132 did, is took away all of that safeguarding. So basically it says that even prior to this law, the men were able to still go in there if they had even if they did not have the surgery, but they were very specific about who they allowed to go in there. But now with this new law, anybody can go in. It's like an open door policy. All you got to do is say I'm a woman, and they'll just let you right on in. That, I said, that is scary. That is horrifying right there. It goes on to say Wolf, or it says the Women's Liberation Front is the well, I'm actually gonna bypass that. Oh, you know what, let me actually do talk about that. It says WOOF is a self-described radical feminist organization that opposes policies that permit biological males in women-only spaces. The group currently represents 4 female inmates in a lawsuit against the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitations that seeks to have SB 132, which is called the Transgender Respect Agency and Dignity Act, declared unconstitutional. You know what? I could care less what these staunch feminists do. However, in this regard, I'm all for them trying to overturn that one. I'm all for it. Because again, it's crazy enough that these women are already in prison enough for whatever it is that they've done. But then by law, even though they did whatever crime it is, they still have to protect them. Because they got to protect their bottom line. And they don't get protected when you have people like that going in there. Now I'm curious though, what did he go to prison for? Because it doesn't specify what he actually did, but I'm almost going to assume it's probably the same thing in which that's got him transferred up out of there. They said Carroll is one of several female identifying biological males represented by the American Civil Liberties Union, Transgender Law Center, and Lambda Legal, who intervened to oppose WOOF's lawsuit in August 2023. They said Carroll stated, "I know what it feels like to live in fear and to carry the weight of the past abuse by men, but I am not a threat." How are you not a threat? You violated 2 women and one of them was in the shower. How are you not a threat? This man is living in delusion. And then said less than a year later, Carroll would be accused of violations. It goes on to say, it says, "This is somebody that I did keep a close eye on because of their history, their background, their habitual manipulation, frivolous lawsuit after frivolous lawsuit, constantly filing complaints against everyone. I knew that this was going to be an issue." So it's a lot of things going on. And then going into the thing where I was saying before, this guy definitely wasn't identifying as trans before, because it also states that there was no history of Carroll identifying as any type of LGBTQ plus person until SB 132 passed. So that means prior to that, he's always identified as a man. But then when this passed, then that's when he decides, I'm going to identify as a woman. But it's funny because he still has the equipment of that of a man, and he's still going, and look at what he did. And ironically, I was just asking, where's his criminal history? As I'm scrolling down, I find it. They said his criminal history goes back to 1988 when he was 15. He was charged with grand theft of property and possession of a firearm by a minor. In 1990, he committed his first and second strike offenses under California's 3-strike law, and a crime that involved allegations of kidnapping, robbery, and another type of violation. So this guy has a history. That's why I said when he did what he did, I wonder if it was for the same type of crime or if it was something else. So he got his 2 strikes when he was a teenager, when he was getting ready to go into his adult years. And fast forward all these years later, and look at what he's doing now. And it says his 3rd strike came in 1998 when he was the getaway driver in a jewelry store robbery, leading to a 25 to life sentence as a 3-strike offender. So this guy just has a lengthy record. No wonder he decided to try to take the easy way out and try to do the "I'm going to identify as a woman" thing. They say he also has a long history of filing lawsuits against the department, tons of lawsuits, and he is constantly writing inmate complaints about everyone and anyone he can have a negative impact on. And they mentioned the person's name who created that SB 132. His name was Scott Wiener. What a name. And like I told y'all, this Scott Wiener is in the academy. Like I said, there's definitely more to it. It's a very lengthy article. I'll probably post a link to it so you can actually see for yourself, but y'all pretty much get the gist of it. The point of this is that this person right here is not a woman. They're not trans. They're faking the funk so they can get in there and do what they did, or maybe they felt like they were going to be safer in a women's prison, but to my knowledge, a lot of those women prisons are just as bad and deadly as the men prisons are, from what I've heard. But look at what he did when he got there. He couldn't even stay low key. All he had to do was be in there, serve out his sentence. I don't know what he could have possibly done, what kind of length, what kind of sentence he had, going into there. But now he's done racked up additional charges and he's getting transferred out of there and going to a men's prison. Now I doubt he's going to try that over there, but I'm willing to bet that they're going to hear about what he did to get over there. And well, let's just say he might want to get a chastity belt.